Let me know where you are. Are you going to be painting with me today? If you guys want the PDF to go with some step out pictures and everything that I'm going to talk about today, it's going to be in that PDF. For you guys that are new and don't know me too well, I am a certified one-stroke instructor, and I've been working hard at my levels and just keep working, and I'm practicing and all the time. And so here I am now at a level to be able to teach and help you guys with your one-stroke. And if you guys have never heard of one-stroke or have never tried it before, definitely this is going to be a beginner-friendly class. Lots of fun. Got a lot of people jumped on my programs and courses that I have for practice programs, and also I have projects that like this today, and some are easy, some are a little bit more advanced, so it just depends on where you are in your journey. And yeah, so it's a great place to start with something really fun and easy today. I'm born up here in Canada, and right now it is cold and we have lots of snow, and so I did do this painting a couple years ago, and I thought this would be a fun one to do this time of year. Is the perfect time to do some snow. And of course, I always tend to change things up a little bit, guys. But you know, the general, I'm going to share the color list with you guys here as well. And so thank you for coming and hanging out with me this afternoon for a couple hours. You know, it is, I don't like to speed along too much. I hope that you're going to be painting with me, and you can keep up to me. Yeah, definitely contact me on Messenger. Facebook Messenger is the best way to do that, and we can chat more about anything that you want to do, learn. Like if you want to get your level 1 now, I'm able to help you do your level 1, and then you'll be able to start teaching some paint parties as well, and or just really hone in on your practice, guys. So we are going to play with Wicker White, Cobalt Blue, okay, is one of my favorite blues. And then to deepen and darken it a little bit, so I use the Folk Art series, guys. So depending on what brands you guys use, hopefully you'll find something similar or make it your own. I'm sure that, you know, you'll be able to create some of the same colors. We have the Parisian blue to darken things a little bit. And then we also are going to be using a greenscape, okay, which is a little bit of grayish green. If you don't have that, you could always use just regular medium gray. If you don't have that, you can always mix a little bit of black or licorice and white together and create your own. If you want it to be a little bit more purpley, I was also thinking about playing around with adding a few more shades in there as well today, and play around with something a little bit more mauvey. We can play around with some magenta and create some nice pastel pinks or pastel blues or purples to put in there. So again, if you have just like your regular crayon colors, perfect purple or lilac or violet pansy, any of those colors, and just add white to them, guys, and we'll be able to put some extra hues into them as well. Okay, so then we're going to need some tree colors, and depending what you got, real brown or burnt umber. I put camel in there to lighten it up a little bit, but if you don't have these light browns, you can always just add white into your dark browns, and they're going to start creating some of these blends for you. So folk art has a couple different varieties and depends on the tones of them. Okay, some might be a little bit darker than each other and more cooler or warmer. And hopefully, if you guys haven't seen, I made a video on color theory for you guys on YouTube, so check that out, and it might help you a little bit more if you're interested in learning more about color theory, about cool colors and warm colors, and how to create colors, right? So we have coffee latte, honeycomb, and camel are good choices that you can play around with. Pablo is another nice one if you like one a little bit richer, darker colors in there. You can always add that into your list as well. And then for brushes, we're going to play around with scruffies. Okay, so some of you may not have ever played with these before, and I call them my pouncers. Okay, so you can load up with lots of paint, and you can really get a lot of ground coverage and snow and play with our trees and add a lot of great effects really, really quickly. Okay, so they do come in different sizes, and depending on which kit you have. Donna Dewberry has, these are her brushes. They're wonderful brushes. They're only sold through her, onestroke.com, and or through me. If you're in Canada, I can ship them through to you in Canada as well. So we have a value set that has 10 brushes, and it's really wonderful, guys. Check out my supplies under Paint With Me, and you'll see all the different kits that you can get. And so in the kit, we actually have one small one and one large one. And then if you get the Pro kit, or if you want to buy them individually, I do have a half size as well that's available for, you know, the middle range projects that are in between. So these are a lot of fun. We use them to pounce the centers into sunflowers and all kinds of different effects. Like I said, to create trees and leaves and foliage, and lots of little fun. So if you don't have one of these guys, and you happen to have a old brush that's lost its chisel and it's really fuzzy, and if you get to know the one stroke technique, we really love doing a lot of chisel work. And our brushes have, with the one Donna Dewberry has, wonderful chisels on them, and you can get such a nice fine line just by painting on a vertical with your chisel. Okay, so sometimes our brushes are old, or they're crappy brushes from somewhere else. Okay, and no matter what you do, maybe you let the paint dry in there and you didn't clean it properly, or you painted on a lot of wood and it's gone really frayed on the ends, because wood is really hard on your brushes, guys, and will do that to you. So you can see that no matter how I squish this, it keeps separating me in the middle. Okay, so ideally I really don't want to use this wet, so you definitely want to use this dry, so then that way it really helps to keep it all nice and fuzzy. And that's what I do, is I put it right into my towel and I scrunch it around and I make it even worse. All right, so if you have a big brush that you can really play and separate those bristles around, and then when you go and pounce on it on there, it'll give you a little bit similar effect. But these are definitely a little shorter, they're a lot denser, and they've got a really flat area that you'll be able to get a really nice pounce. So you can also hear the difference, see? Right, from doing it with the pouncer and just a regular old brush. So definitely you will see a difference in these wonderful scruffy brushes, and I highly suggest you to pick them up if you don't have them. And then in the value set as well, we also have our script liners. Okay, so there's a number 1 and a number 2 in our kits, and one is longer than the other. Okay, and the little one is got a little bit fatter of a belly, so it's almost like a round brush, and you can do tiny little daisy strokes with this and small little details if you want, and play around with it. And then as well with our liner brush, our longer liner brush is amazing. So if you want to get those small little tree line branches, then a little bit smaller, then definitely you can use a little bit longer brush for that to do those strokes. And then also we have some flat brushes in our kit, and we have from 3/4 flat to a 12, 10, 8, 6, and even a little tiny 2 in there. And depending on what you're painting on, then definitely, you know, you can, it's really handy to have them all in the different sizes, and then you can create a lot of different effects and double load your brushes. This is what one stroke is all about, where we're able to put 2 colors on our brush at the same time, so we can highlight and blend and shadow all at the same time, get this done. And because a lot of the traditional art techniques that are out there is really a lot of layering and glazing and really playing around. And back in the day before YouTube came around, a lot of people had to go to art school to learn how to do all this and understand color theory and learning how colors react with each other and getting all those shadows in. And some people love to play and tinker, and they'll take like a month to paint this painting in their ways of doing it. So with the one stroke technique, it definitely does give you a quicker way of getting things in and getting that dimension to pop out and look 3D and be able to get that in there, right? So also Donna has wonderful sponges, okay? She calls them painter sponges, right? And there's 2 in a pack, and one has more of a round area and one has a flat area. And then the other one has a little bit of a point. So sometimes we want to squish our brush and get a little bit more of a straight line, you know, so they have the flat sides like that. And then I love the round sides because they make making clouds so easy, guys. All right, so all you have to do is just sponge it in there, and you'll see by today I'm going to show you how these wonderful sponges work. And you can keep washing them, make sure you keep them damp. And one is a little bit newer than the other. I just opened up a new kit. So you can see that they're wonderful. They have like a little scrubby side on the other side. And if you want a little bit more texture and look, you know, in your paint, then definitely you can flip it over to this side and you'll get more of a like a sea sponge kind of look. And you can speckle it on really light, or you can put on really heavy coverage with these guys. And so yeah, this is one of my favorite things to do. And then of course your canvas, guys. So what you want to paint on, the size you want to paint on, it really doesn't matter. It's totally up to you. If you want to do something smaller or you want to do a big 16 by 20 canvas, it's, you know, really up to you how big you want to do it, because there's no real pattern for this, guys. We're going to eyeball it, and I'm going to show you how to place it in and how we're going to spread it out. And then really, if you put your trees a little bit higher or lower or left or right or whatever, it really is not going to matter at the end, because we're all going to look unique. And I could paint this painting 10 times and it's probably going to look different every time. All right, so what I'm going to actually play around on today is some canvas paper. And this is the particular brand that I have here. Is called the extra large. It's a 11 by 14. And it's great for oil and it's great for acrylic. Okay, so there is some more cardstock styles. It's more like cardboard kind of, and sometimes they're a little bit dry and it really sucks in a lot of paint. So this kind of paper will help you definitely be able to paint on it, and it's going to be very similar to what a canvas is like. So if you're a little bit hesitant on spending the money on a canvas and you want to play and practice these techniques, then I highly suggest picking up one of these. They're beautiful to paint on. They're bleed proof, and you know, they're not going to start warping on you like a cardstock will. Okay, so but for cardstock, definitely, you know, I don't spend a lot of money on my cardstock, but it is a little thicker than your printing paper. All right, so for practicing some of these strokes, definitely I suggest to get some cardstock out, or if you have some plastic paper, or even a binder cover, guys. Okay, so they even make a great place to put your paint and you know, blend a little bit on here. Or what we're going to use is a foam plate to put our paint on. But definitely, you know, like have some paper around, anything will do. Even open up an old cereal box, guys, and paint on the inside of it. Okay, once you get your background done and paint it with something thin and let it dry, then it's going to be like a base coat on there, and then you'll be able to paint all your other elements on there very easily. All right, so there's some ideas for you guys to be able to paint on. Okay, and then it fits nice in under my camera, and not too big, so then that way you guys can see it nice and clear on this side, because there's a little bit of a lift and I'm right-handed. So that will make my life a little bit easier. Yeah, so we're gonna get some paint out and start with our cobalt blue. Okay, and definitely we're going to need some white. And what I suggest is try to spread your paint out on the side of your bowl or plate or whatever, because what we're going to do is line all our colors around the outside, and then we'll have more room on the inside to do some blending. And I've already got myself covered in paint. Go figure. All right, so we also have, I need a little bit of chalk or a pencil to help guide you along the way as well. Right. And then we're going to put in a little bit of greenscape to get us started. A little bit of wisteria maybe. That's what I did in my original, was the greenscape. But actually, I'm really liking this light purple color too. Let's change it up a little bit. But whatever you guys got, right? If you have to create your own little blends, that'll be fine too. It's just to put that little bit of extra texture in the background, so then that way our white snow is going to stand out and have a little bit more dimension in there. Okay. So the first step we're going to do is lay out our horizon line, get our clouds in there, and start placement for our river to come through. Okay, so when I did this a little while ago, I was looking at it going, well, this river's coming from a mountain hill kind of look. And sometimes I guess they could come, but then I would think that I would have to straighten this out a little bit, so then that way it doesn't look like it's coming from the top of a hill. Because mostly rivers don't come too far from, but it is the way I just kind of made it. So, and we can straighten that out a little bit and change anything you don't like. And that's what I always say, try it first on something on cardstock or, you know, this canvas paper. And then if you really, really like it, you're always going to see areas that you wish you could have changed or did more of or whatever. So that's what happens when you do things the second time. You always have that eye to be able to, let's change this. I don't like that. All right. So what I like using is chalk or pencil. And chalk is very easy to disappear when you start painting on it. So it is definitely one of my favorites. So try to have maybe a colored chalk, so then that way it stands out a little bit for you. All right. So basically our horizon is about 2/3 of your painting up. Okay. So it doesn't matter what size you're doing. Okay. Figure out where half is. And then this is about, then you can easily figure out what a quarter is, right? Then right in between your quarter and your half is about 2/3. Okay, and then you're just going to draw a little bit of a line. Okay, you can make it, maybe there's a hill over here, and then, you know, you're going to come up, and then we're going to put our hill a little bit further over here and bring that up instead of down this time. Okay, so the nice thing about our sponges too, they work as like a little erasers. So you can just dampen that a little bit and erase anything that you don't like. Okay, and that'll all disappear when you start painting, guys. Okay, so we can start doing a little bit of a placement, and just like a little bit of a wiggly line over to the side, and then another one a little bit over here. Okay, so it's going to be coming in through the middle of your painting. So you'll have lots of room on each side to put some trees and some background and all kinds of things. All right, so somewhere around there. Okay, make it a little bit irregular. And then that way you'll know where to stop. Okay, and then we're going to start changing our paint patterns and adding different colors into our sponge to create the ground coverage. Okay, so if you dampened your sponge, okay, actually I'm going to use my bigger one today. All right, so what I suggest you guys do is just dampen half of your sponge. Okay, so sometimes I like to erase something or you know, spread it out a little bit more or smooth it out a little bit more. I like to have half of my sponge to be dry, so that way I can use it as a blending tool a little bit more, or just to erase anything I don't like, right? And then you have a damp side on your sponge that's going to help absorb the paint a little bit better. Okay, so what we're going to do is actually double load our painting sponge. Okay, so you're going to dip right over into our paint. And then over on the other side of our corner, you're going to dip the white. And then right in the middle, Okay, you push down on it. You're going to start blending it. Okay, add a little bit more white. Probably going to need more white, actually. I don't think I put out enough. And also what you might need as well is a floating medium. Okay, so for those that have never played with floating medium before, it's actually a wonderful product that you can use to thin down your paint and add a little bit more medium in there, because our paints are pretty thick, guys, right? So it's better to buy a paint that's too thick so that you can control and thin down when you want to, because you can even make watercolors out of these paints if you really want to. So it all depends on how much liquids that you put in there. So we have blending gels and all kinds of different glazing gels, folk art carries, but the floating medium is my go-to. I love this one. It dries at the same speed as your paint, and if you need a little bit more moisture to, make things move on your canvas, then I would rather add a little bit of this to the side on my plate, and then trying to dip in my sponge into my water, because you can't control it over there. You'll end up putting way too much moisture in there. And this way I can just dab the very, very little corner of my sponge if I want, when I need it, and then just keep blending here in the middle of your two piles. Okay, so don't go all over your plate, guys. Just try to keep it focused to that small little area, and then that way we'll be able to use our plate for more colors. So pretty straightforward so far. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is start adding some blue down here. So if you put your blue on the bottom side, okay, hopefully you didn't load it the other way around, because it's really helpful to be in the same direction as your painting, right? So if you're right-handed, then definitely you want to have that dark color on the bottom side of your sponge. Okay, so then that way you can get that little bit of light coming up behind it, right? If you're left-handed and you're coming along this way, because that's probably what's feeling more comfortable for you, then make sure that you're loading your dark color on the bottom side of your brush or your sponge. Okay, so once we have that horizon line in there roughed out, then we can start doing some pouncing and modeling and adding some color to our, so you see I'm just kind of just getting it in there. I'm not really trying to do anything special. I'm just pouncing that paint in there and see how it feels for moisture. If you feel like it's just not absorbing, then definitely you may need a little bit more floating medium, or you don't have enough paint on your sponge. So definitely come back in and reload your sponge, okay, as you need it. And what I like to do too is sometimes have one side a little bit darker than the other, so we can add a little bit more darkness. And then also what really helps too is if you squish your sponge. Okay, so if you see that I'm very flat on my sponge, you're going to get those little round marks from your sponge, right? So if you do a little bit of a back, pull on it back, and pull and squish. Okay, so now you're going to get more of a softer little area that you will be able to pounce with. Okay, so we can tip on our side and just use the dark side when we want it a little bit darker. Okay, maybe put a little bit darker up there. Okay, and then we can tip over on this side when we want it a little bit lighter. Okay, so it all depends on how big you want to make your clouds, guys. I'm kind of just went a little bit too far over here maybe. And you can always mute things down and also make them a little bit darker or lighter. Okay, so we're going to come in and add some more of that blue. Okay, so now we want to add some shadows into our little clouds. Okay, so we can tip a little bit of that blue over, and that'll help to put a little bit of a shadow underneath your clouds. Okay, so we can make them a little bit more irregular Okay, bring some more dark in there if you went too light. Okay, so I like to always show you what you can do to get out of things as well. Because sometimes people, oh, I wrecked it, I made it too light, I made it too dark. Okay, so don't worry. This is all still fairly wet, and just loading it with really lots of paint and go over it and just lightly stipple into it. And then you can add these little clouds. Okay, and then when I want to get into some more details, then I'll do like a little twist. Okay, try to make some clouds irregular. Okay, and that helps to kind of soften things a little bit as well. Alright. And then what I like to do too with my clouds is give them some unders, right? So you're going to have a nice strong little area of white. Okay, just irregular little pounces with your, okay, soften that out a little bit. And then what we're going to do, guys, is actually flip your canvas upside down. Okay, and then we can add a few more little round areas where the clouds, you can see the fluffiness of it from underneath. Okay. And some of this will be hidden by trees, and okay, so everyone just soften that out so then that way it's not anything too hard lines. Okay, so then you have a little bit of dark in here. Okay, but you can kind of see how you're getting both sides of your clouds. So then you can always add in other little layers. Okay, because a lot of times clouds will have, you know, a couple different layers, and right, so we have some different dimensions, and so definitely, you know, I always have to change things up, and my skills have evolved too since way back then, and so definitely the more you play, the more you learn, the more you try, the more it'll come, right? Just if it's you're not liking it, just let it dry and then go over it again. Okay, take a blow dryer to it so it's quicker, and then that way it'll dry fast, and then you'll be able to layer on top of it and add more. Okay, so we're definitely gonna need some more blue, and I like just putting out a little bit at a time, guys, because I don't like wasting my paint. Definitely, you know, just put out a little bit at a time as you need it. Okay, and then you can see how I'm just coming in here and darkening this area, just so that my horizon line is going to be the darkest right here at the bottom. Okay, and then whatever you got left in your brush, guys, you're just going to do a little sweep. Just get some blue in there to get the water started. Okay, so you're just going to sweep whatever's left into your sponge over to the side. And make it a little bit irregular, so then that way you have some movements. Okay. And then on your white side, you can also start adding a little bit of streakiness. Okay, so make sure you get it nice and blue, and then just add just the odd little streak. Okay, so you see I'm just dirtying it in areas, and this is just going to start getting your placement in for your little waves, because maybe it's coming down a hill and there's ripples in there, and you can make this little river smooth or rough, you know, as you want to, you know, if it's a really calm day for you. But coming down a little bit of a hill, you know, you got to have some little ripples, and then of course we're going to put a few rocks in there, and then when the water moves around the rocks, you're going to have a little bit more movement coming along. Okay, so it just gets us started with that. Okay, so we can always add to it. And then we're also going to add a tree line way back there as well. Okay, so if you are done with your sponge, no, we're not done with our sponge, actually. We're going, getting ahead of myself here. What I want you to do is actually just take a rag. Just take out most of it, okay? And then what I want to do is come over and load up lots and lots of white. Get rid of all the rest of that white. And then we can come over and pick up a little bit of that grayish color that you have, all right? And then we're going to start, our white is on the light side, so we can pick up some nice bright white to kind of give us a little bit of a horizon or hill line, and getting that base coated a little bit. Okay, and then cover up that line, nice strong line, and then just swoop it right into your water. Okay. Then we're going to be adding a tree here, so that's going to be hiding lots there. And then we can always pounce in and add more snow to fix anything, guys, okay? So then I want to just do a pounce. So I definitely need more white. I'm not putting enough white on my plate for sure today. I put 2 gallops in there. Alright, so now we're going to pick up lots of white and then start pouncing just with our sponge to get some different modeling looks. And if there's a tiny bit of blue that comes through there, that's okay. Leave those little blue areas. Okay, and then add a little bit more white. Softly pounce that in there. Try not to go over the same area too many times, so then that way it starts giving you little mottled areas, different colors. And this is where you guys can add more colors to it if you wanted to add just a little bit more pinky areas or more darker blue areas, or we'll just add a little bit of just enough to say that I'm dirtying my brush sponge with some pink, okay, pinky purples, and we can sponge a little bit of that in there. So it's whatever comes from your sponge now, guys. Try not to go over the same area too much, and then also tip over on your white side so that you can get that light color in there, modeled in there with your dirty side. Okay, so sometimes I'll plop down a bunch of dark, and then I tip over with my white to kind of mute it and soften it. So you don't even really have to pre-mix any colors. You just play with it, guys, and just sometimes it just don't overthink it. Just let it go, right? So put that color in, and then I'm going to smush. I must have picked up some greenscape in there too. So just soften that out. And then we're going to start, see how it tipped right over so that my white side is going to come over into my water line. Okay. And then I'm just going to sponge myself out into that corner. Keep adding white. And soften out those little areas. You just get a little bit of a spongy look. And then I'm going to try and turn my canvas around so then that way I can get that white edge also on here. Okay, so you're just going to sponge some irregularly, and then we're going to add to this, guys, and pounce on it with our scruffy brushes and add more. But it was just getting our base coat in there and getting that started. Okay. Pretty quick and easy so far. And you can always fix any areas. I'm trying to get down the side here. Because you can, if these turn out really nice on your canvas paper, guys, you can put these in frames too, right? So if you don't like it, then it just stays in a closet somewhere. But, you know, if it turns out nice and you want to share it and give it away as a gift, then, you know, sometimes you're pleasantly surprised with your first attempt, and then you're going to go, dang, that's just on crappy paper. So yeah, this canvas paper is really nice that you can be able to do that with. You can see it's not warping or changing on me. Now, I'm not putting over amounts of water in here either, right? So I'm sure if you really diluted it, it's not a watercolor paper, guys. All right, so there is special paper out there that's designed for watercolor effects. So this is made for acrylic and oil, so it's a little bit thicker, lays on top of the paper as opposed to really getting saturated inside. So now we're officially done with our sponge. Okay, so what we're going to do is we can fold it in half if you have one of these little handy reservoirs here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my sponge down the side so that I still have lots of room to be able to put my brushes in. There you guys. So don't leave them in the water like this. See how deep that is? There's a nice scruffy brush, my yucky one, I think. Because they get really waterlogged inside your ferrule, guys. So that's why they have these handy little compartments on the side so that you're able to put your brush in there and it doesn't soak it with lots of water, because it does go up a little bit on you, but definitely being able to keep the handle out of the water is really important, because I learned the hard way. And if you see through some of my courses, you'll see some of my brushes, the paint is falling off of them because I drowned them. And so now I have invested myself into the nice Pro sets from Donna Dewberry, so I'm definitely taking better care of them. And they are just wonderful too if you want to upgrade to a better brush. Her Pro series is amazing. So yeah, that's basically it for our... Okay. So I did put more snow up there, but that's okay because you're not actually going to see that. All right, so here we have step 2. All right. So hopefully this is going to be dry for you, okay, so that you can map out. What I suggest is map out where you want to put things, okay, so that way you can keep you a little bit more guided in space and also size, so that you don't end up too big, okay. It's really, really important. So I'm actually going to take 1 second here, guys, and mute myself. And just take the blow dryer to this really quickly. And if you're at the same stage as me, then I highly suggest that you just stop quickly and blow dry this. And so now we got this definitely dry, so we'll be able to mark on it. All right. So the first thing I want to do is figure out my big tree on the left-hand side, guys. Okay. So what I did with that was I did a wraparound design on a wrapped canvas where I actually painted right around the sides, guys. Okay, so this one here is going to come out off the side. So you're only going to see... Better get a pencil. I think that'll be easier for you guys to see. All right. So maybe you can see this a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so you're just basically going to put the side of your trunk in there. Okay. And then it's going to branch out and come up right up to the top. Okay, so you can put some just basic lines in there, and then off of every main line, our branches usually come off into a Y. Okay, so then off of every little branch, there's another little Y. Okay, so the more you fill it, you know, it's up to you. But you definitely want to stay a little bit closer to this side, okay? So don't cover more than 1/4 of your canvas here, up here on the top. Okay, and then we can always add, we're going to rough in some placement in here, and then we can always add to these branches later and make them more defined once we realize how much room that we have left over. Okay, so then we want to put some a pine tree here on the side in the front foliage as well. And all I did, guys, was just do like a wiggle. Just do your like a little scribble here. Okay. And then that way it gives you just a quick placement. We don't have to be artists here. We're just putting placement in, guys. Okay. And then over here in the bottom of our hill, we have a few more. Okay. So just little scribbles, just like in a little arrow kind of look, right? You're just doing like a little arrows, scribbles, right? And then maybe we want to make one beside it a little bit taller. Okay, so just helping you for placement, guys. All right. And then way back here, okay, so we are going to add to this as well. We have the smaller trees that are going to be in the foreground. So you want to just put like little arrows there, right? Little pointy things. And then they can get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger as they go. Okay. And then we have another evergreen that's going to be here. Okay, so little triangles, little scribbles, right? And then we have another one that's going to be in the foreground here. Right? And then we also have some trees that have lost their branches over here. So we can put one over here. Okay, so he's going to be a lot further away, so it's going to be smaller. Right, and then another one, and maybe he's leaning into a different direction. Okay. So just quick placement, guys, all right? So I'm just putting in some rough placements. And then if you want to get particular, you can spend a bit more time and try to draw it out more, you know, for your branches, especially on these ones that are got no leaves. But your evergreens are going to be really easy, guys. Okay. And then over here off the side of the water, we also have another tree that's an evergreen. Okay, so I just do one up and then one off like a Y. Right? Stick one up there again and then start making your branches off of it. Alright, so that's the easiest tree that you can do. Right? And then we also have our little fence. Okay, so what I did there was just try to give yourself a little bit of a curve. Alright, for your top line. Get this one out of the way. Alright, so he's going to come in behind this tree. Right, and then you can put another double line coming all the way. Okay, just shy of the water. Okay, and then of course you got to put your little posts where you want it to stop. And then try to spread them out a little bit. So if you want 4 posts or 3 posts, right? So there's about halfway. You can put one there and there, right? And then we'll be able to find that and keep a, you know, around it a little bit. So that way you know where things are going to be. Okay. Does that sound okay with you guys for a plan? Yeah, thumbs up. Perfect. Thanks so much. All right. Okay. Okay, so this is where we are going to start putting our trees in. Okay, so for our evergreens, all we need to do is just put like a straight line up there and just to get the placement in there, and then the trees. Okay, but see back here, we do have a little bit of a snowy look behind some of them. Okay, so this is where I want to pick up my scruffy a little bit first. Okay, so I would suggest using your big one. Okay, and then we'll be able to get a little bit more detail in here with a smaller scruffy than our sponge. Okay, so load it up good. Make sure it's dry, guys. Okay, so then that way you get lots of really good thick paint in there. All right, so you're really loading that brush up. Okay, and again, I probably need more white. All right, so then we're just going to start adding some fluffiness along our background here. Get us started. Okay, and wherever there's a tree, you can just lightly go over it because you're not going to be really doing much there anyways, but at least, and then you can see your tree. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, is really brighten up that area. I should just leave this out and dump in it. Um, yeah, so we always add some more colors and add to it as well. So we're going to keep this scruffy out, and we're going to be using it a little bit back and forth, okay? And if you have two of them, that's wonderful. Or so basically, it's just really heavy white all the way around here. So you can see how this gives you a really nice fluffy look. Okay, and then we're going to come back up over here. So then that way, if anything shows between our trees, it's going to have that little bit of a snowy look. Okay, so just one color for now, just to get all of our main areas done. All the way down to the bottom. That helps really brighten things up a little bit. So where I also want you to start doing a little bit of snow is right at the bottom of where we plan to have our trees. Okay, so there's going to be a little bit of a snowy look there, a little bit of a snowy look there. So it looks like a little bit of hill. And we're going to add to this here as well, but this is just going to help you, again, for placement. And then also we're going to start doing a little bit of pouncing into our tree line. Okay, so then that way we can keep it tiny over there. And it's going to be skinny, and then the river's going to just come out from, trees are hiding from where they're coming from. So that we don't really see where the river is coming from. It's just where it's coming towards us. Okay. And then we can always add a little bit more snow just underneath where our fence line is. Okay, just to get it going. Add a little bit of color and pop. Okay, so hopefully you have enough colors and dimensions going on already from our base coat that really all you should need is some white. Okay. So we're just going to put another little, maybe a hill over here, corner, and then we're going to add to it. Okay. All right. Just lightly putting that in the water now, but I am going to dry it really well if I need it again. Because I don't want it to dry out, because these scruffy brushes can get wrecked on you too. You got to really make sure you get down and get all that paint out, clean them off. Okay, so now we're going to need a little bit of brown, so whatever you have, your burnt umber or true brown. And depending on what you feel comfortable with working with, you don't want to use something too big, but you don't want to use anything too small. So even just a 12 is good to start for your trees, so that way this big tree can get a lot of coverage in good. And then we can also use it on our chisel to get some of our smaller trees in. Okay. So sometimes I do like to moisten my brush just a little bit with some floating medium. Okay, as opposed to water, because then I can really tell how much liquid's in there. Okay, I'm just picking up just a little tiny bit. And for right now, I'm just going to load up one color just to make things easy for you guys. Okay. So we're just going to start base coating our tree. Get that brown in there. Okay, so it's not coming all the way down to the bottom on this side. And I did make my river come out a little bit more here on this one, but that's okay. So we just want to get that base coat of the brown done. And this is where that little bit of floating medium sometimes helps if you're getting those skimpy marks here, where if you go too fast, you're not allowing the paint to actually absorb. So, and then plus that little bit of extra Floating medium helps you to glide that paint along a little bit easier too, but not too much because it's going to go too translucent. Okay, so I'm trying to get a good coverage here. And then this is where I'm going to start using a bit more of my chisel. Okay, so we might have a branch that comes and disappears back there, but then he's going to come and Y off over here. Okay, so this is where I want to put like a thinner stroke. Okay, because you can always make them fatter, but you can't go back and you can't erase if everything's all nice and dry. I do like to erase a lot if I don't like something, but you know, I try to do it thinner so then that way you know that you can always add to it. Okay. And then we have maybe another big branch coming up in this way. We have a late visitor. Okay. Make that a little bit thicker at the base and then come up a little bit skinnier on the side. These are our main branches. Okay. Then we have maybe one that's going to come off of this branch and then come over on this side. Okay. So right where it connects, you always want to make sure that's a little bit thicker. Okay. And then to match it, you want to make sure that this is going to be a little bit thicker too. Okay, so then that way you know your main trunk is definitely going to be your thickest area. Okay, so this is where sometimes people will branch off and they just make them very straight. Okay, so you're just having that little bit of thickness. Sometimes I'll do like a little triangle look. And then I'll come out with my chisel to make it thin. Okay. And again, your smaller ones, they get smaller and smaller over here. So try to make sure that you're not going too thick. And then if you feel like any point that you are going smaller and smaller and you're having a hard time with your chisels, then definitely switch to a liner brush. Okay, so we're just going to play around and get our main, especially on this side, we know that we're not going to cover anything. All right. This is where I show you how to erase, guys, when something's too fat. Just take another clean flat brush. And as long as your background is dry, you can always come in and erase what you don't like. Make sure you got clean water. Use my scruffy brush. So I always use old brushes too when I do a lot of erasing, so that way I don't wreck my brushes. But yeah, you can just erase it right off. And then try again. Just come up a little lighter on your chisel so that you're hardly touching your canvas. Okay, and then do your little pop-ups like this if you have to make things a little bit thicker. Because what we do in our stroke work is actually a lot of pressure and then pop up. Right, so if you're not feeling comfortable with your pressure popping up on your chisel, then definitely, you know, you can just add to it a little bit that way, just by just doing some little short jabbies, and then trying to make that little triangle look right at the base. Okay. And we're going to put another one that comes up here, and then one over here. And that's good for now. And then, like I said, I want to come back to this, and we're going to add some more dimension and that light brown cameo or a little bit of white on there, and that'll help add. And then we're also going to put snow on top of here, guys, too. So pounce a little bit of snow. Okay. And then we can start coming over here and just start adding a little bit of a trunk and then a line, like a thin line going up. Okay, so right here at the base of the trunk, you know, you want to make them a little bit thicker because that's the part that's going to show up. And then we're going to, maybe this one's a little bit set further back. Okay, so let's just start off with your chisel. Okay. I'm going to pounce right over that, so you're not even going to see it. It's just going to keep you guided, okay? But you will see, we're going to leave the bottom of the trunk. Okay, then we have another one that's going to be here. Okay, so your main one. Make it a tiny bit thicker. And then come out with your branches. Okay, so another branch, main branch that's going to be up here. Okay, so again, right at the base here, we have to make it just that little bit thicker. So it looks like it's proportioned. Then we can start doing our branches off a branch. I like to push you guys a little bit, so then that way you're really pushing your skills. Like I said, you can do this all with a liner brush if you feel like you want to. Okay. Add some more little branches. Just the length of the brush, just a touch. Right? Just try to make it a little bit thicker there. And then we'll put another little branch off. And we can always add to that a little bit more too. Okay, and then our little tiny ones. Okay, you don't need much here because you're not even going to see the base of them, but they're just going to remind you that there's something there. Okay. And then we're going to put in the placement of this one. Really fine. And add a little bit more floating medium, guys, if you're having a hard time getting your chisel really thin, because sometimes maybe your paint is too thick. So you add just that little bit of floating medium. That will help to spread the brush really nice and thin. Thicker. This way. Branch is going to come up this way. Okay, and some of it can just disappear right off the edge of the canvas. A bit wider here at the base. Another little, okay, a little bit thicker here at the base. We're going to see this one. And then straight up just to give you where you're going to start. And then this one here, if you want to show just the very bottom of your little one, little bit of a bark here, bottom, and then we're going to do half a tree over here. Okay, so just so that you can see. And a lot of times you don't even see the main thing, but if you do have any spaces in between, I guess you could use a little tiny bit of brown there. But definitely, that's all you really need to do right now. And then we're going to get our scruffy back again. And what if you have two sizes? Okay, so this is where I like to have a smaller one for smaller work, and then the larger one or the medium size one, the half size, for larger work. Okay, and you could also use your yucky brush, guys. Okay, and sometimes if you have a smaller yucky brush, then that'll give you a bit more smaller area. So I have a little bit of another one that's gone yucky. But I hate to throw these brushes out because I like to play with glitter sometimes too, glitter glues and stuff like that. And if you want to play with or something that you want to throw out, you know, I'd rather grab an old brush to do that. But it is nice to have some of these old brushes around. Like I used to teach paint parties, so I have to have a lot of them around for when the kids were playing too. If I didn't have enough of these, then I would give them a few of these old brushes, and then they were able to still do it like a scruffy kind of look as well. Okay. So with our backgrounds, with our trees that we're going to add, we're definitely going to need either a thicket or a sap, one of your darker greens. Okay. And then you're also going to need some yellow or even citrus green. Okay, so if you have a citrus green, that makes a nice green color as well. And but you can make like a citrus green too by just letting your yellow go dirty. Okay, so we're going to play around with our basic colors here today, so then that way, you know, you guys that may be limited with colors, you'll still be able to create your own blends. Okay, so we're going to pick up our yucky brush, okay, because I want to show you guys some smaller ones and some bigger ones, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to double load our brush. I'm going to come over and just take half of it. Then we're going to, excuse me, then we're going to come over and take yellow and put it on the other side of our brush. And this is where you can blend it in a little bit. Okay. You can do like a little side to side motion too to flip your brush over when you have tiny little brushes. So then that way both sides of your brush gets really blended well. So this is what I call side to side. Sometimes we take a color and then we side load right into our puddle. Okay, so the side to side loading, and then your blending pile that we mostly do with larger brushes, just going back and forth. Okay, but when you have smaller brushes, smaller than an 8, sometimes you have a little bit more focus and ability to be able to blend it when you do a side to side as opposed to trying to go sideways with a tiny little brush. Now we want to just add another little layer into this, and we're going to add some white into this. And if you keep blending and moving things around a little bit, some of that green might float over onto your yellow and white mixture, and then you'll end up with that citrusy kind of green. And so it's looking too white, just keep adding more yellow. Okay. And as long as you have 2 colors on your brush, that's all that really matters right now. Okay, so sometimes we have different gradients and stuff like that, where we have more light or more dark on our brush, but for this effect, you really don't need too much. Okay, so what we're going to do is start taking our dark side of our corner and just tapping that little point in. Okay, and then you can just kind of randomly go off to the side like a little arrow. You need to get your dark in there. Keep picking up a little bit of dark. And just kind of go off and back and forth. Let some come down, let some come up. Okay. And then what you're going to do with your double loading area, okay, is then we can start doing some little pouncies in there. Okay, while you're doing that at the same time. So if you want to just do one color at a time, you can do that. Then you'll have to go over and layer it again. Okay, so we don't want it too yellow up here. But we can always come back and add some more highlights and stuff like that as well. So I like to just start the tops of my trees in that direction. And then what I do is I end up flipping my brush upside down so I have the light there. And then you can slowly work and get a few more little branches looking. Okay, so it's not going to really matter too much because we are going to add snow to this. All right, so I just want to show you, you know, a little smaller technique of playing with one of these brushes. But I really do love my little tiny scruffy brush. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing as what I showed you with the flat brush. It's just you're going to end up with just a little bit of green on one side and more yellow on the other side. And what we do to load those is we actually start pouncing right into our plate. And try not to put too much of the dark because it will take over. So this is where it starts to look too dark. Then I come out of my pile, so then that way I can grab more yellow. And then we come over into our white and we start lightening that up. And the more you pounce and play around, you'll start getting that little bit of a blend. Okay, so again, you're going to play with it the same way. Very, very light strokes. Right? Pounce in it. And make all those different kind of highlights in there. Work your way down. Okay. And then another way I actually like to do it too is from upside down. Sometimes it's actually easier to get your layers going as well. Okay, so keep going back in. And then we start at the bottom, on our thickest area. Okay. And we just come straight across. And then you can get some of that dark in there. Pick up fresh paint wherever you need it, and then just stipple over it a little bit where you've done your dark area. You just want to get a little bit smaller as you move up. Okay, getting that dark in there, and then following with your light. So it sits on top. So we can also if you made this a little bit big like I am doing, then you can definitely layer your other tree on top of the other tree. Okay, so maybe this one's a little bit skinnier. So you see how doing it upside down will give you actually a faster, easier look. Go right on top of this guy. And you're just kind of going lightly, slowly, picking up more fresh paint as you need it. Give it a couple pouncies. Work your way up. And I'm ambidextrous a little bit, I'm told. Okay, so right here, now I want to add some dark. Okay, so we want to separate these trees a little bit. Okay, so just make a little bit of dark shadow over onto the side. And then you can pounce some bright yellow back right over on top of it. Or a little bit more white right here along the edge. Okay, so you're just going to float in a little bit more white, which, like I said, we're going to put more snow on there too, right? So just to try to get this tree to look like it's behind the other one. And we'll probably have to put our bark down at the bottom back in there again, but that's okay. Like I said, we're just having fun with it, and every tree is always going to look different. So when you're coming into these guys here, this is where you hopefully you practice now a little bit. Some little bit bigger ones, and then you can just slowly, just little tiny ones over here. A little bit bigger one. Have some a little bit lighter, have some a little bit darker. Up to a point. Makes things a little bit quick, eh? Dark. And just try not to go over the same area too many times, because if you go over the same areas, then you'll definitely start to get muddy. Okay, so the trick is trying to just keep moving up, slowly and randomly, a little bit at a time. And a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. Until you go all the way to the top. Just tiny little points. Make them random. Another little guy over here. And especially far away, they're going to look a lot darker, right? So if you are a little bit closer, then you can get a little bit lighter. Okay. Yeah, I just started right over again. I added more dark green in there. And then now I don't want to go over that area too many times. Okay, so we're just going to go very lightly. Keep picking up that dark paint. Right, so that your light is following behind it. Okay, so you can see it was getting a little bit muddy. It's because I didn't have enough dark. Lots of fun. You can even play with this one with some kids if they want to do some easy paintings. Then they're going to love the scruffy brush. Okay, so now we want to do our big one, right? And definitely this will take you a little bit longer to do with your little tiny brush. So this is where I like to pick up my bigger one. And if yours is in water, guys, make sure that you grab a towel and really sop out that water. Okay, really, really dry it well. And before you go and load up your paint. Load up a little bit of green, but mostly yellow. And add some white. Counts it really good. Get it worked in good. This is a wonderful paintbrush when you have frustrations. You work out your frustrations with this guy. Okay, so this will be a lot faster. And you definitely, when you see a little bit bigger of a tree, you definitely want to have some of those branches look up and down and a little bit more detail, guys. Okay, so just try to spread it out a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to pop in just a few highlights, sprinkle on top, very light kind of pressure. So you see when I really want to get the color in, I press hard. But then sometimes I'll come really light on my touch just to get that little freckle look in there. Okay, so we're getting our dark in there, and then layer in that little bit of light. And then this is going to go right off to a point. Okay. Lots of paint on your brush so that you can get just that little freckles. Okay, so add more paint. And then take your time and try to get a little bit more. You know, some of it will go up, some will go down. Okay. Darker up sides here. And then now I'm going to start freckling in a little bit more of that yellow mixture, but I definitely want to add a little bit more white because I want this guy to be a lot brighter. So if you have a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white coming through, you have all these little different variations. And when it's dry too, you can go over it and freckle just lightly. Add more white. Okay, so we can start getting a little bit of our snow look in there. And while we have that in there, you're afraid to have some few heavy spots. Trail away. Okay, this we lost that tree. And so I'm just putting a little bit of dark in there just so that I can see him again. Recreating as I go. Okay, so to get a better perspective on things, flip it back upside down so that you can see. Alright, and then if you have lots of white in your brush, okay, if you want to start flecking a little tiny bit more white, just on that one side, very light-handed. One in the front, you can add a little bit more. Just very light little freckles. And we can come back in later too and add a little bit more snow if you want. Because we are going to add a little bit more highlights with our flat brush on our other trees. Okay. Let it dry and play with it, right? If it's getting too light, always pop in just a little bit more dark, especially in behind there, because you want that tree to look like it's a little further away. Okay, and then we can always go back in with our brown and add another little trunk in here. Okay, so maybe this one's a little bit fatter. So some quick, easy trees. What do you think, guys? Do we have any questions here? I hope that you guys on Zoom will just unmute yourself and ask any questions if you need any help. How you guys doing? I see a lot of heads down painting. That's great. Wonderful to see faces on this side. Hey, how's my YouTube land going? All good? Sounds good? Okay, perfect. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I can't wait to see your paintings, guys. I hope you guys are going to come on my Facebook group and join us there. So we do a few different events and things on there as well. Try to keep things interesting and be a little bit all over the place in our social media world. Okay, so now that we've got our little bit of greenery going on, like I said, guys, you can always play with it. All right, so this was the look that I had going on before I added the snow. And I must have used like a citrus green here, a little bit brighter green. Okay, so it's going to look a little bit different depending on what colors you put in there. Okay, so then I also have a couple other little twiggy things that I added in later with all the little grasses and anything that might be poking out through the snow. Then we're going to add all those little extra details later. So this is where I want to start to get my liner brush out and do our little fence. Okay, so if you want to do that with a black and or a gray, you know, you can different gray tones, or if you want to stay with the brown tones. I did change it to a black type look, so then that way it's looks a little bit different. Maybe it's an old fence. You know, the old fences turn a little bit gray after a while. But I don't want it to be harsh black, so I'm just going to come over and lighten it up a little bit with the little bit of greenscape. Okay, or if you have gray, and if it's too dark for you, you know, just add a little bit of white and play with it on the side. Okay. Add a little bit of floating medium or a little bit of water to it, so then that way you can get your detailer to be really thin. Okay, so see if it's really gloopy, it's going to be thick. So if you pull out some of that paint, try again. Okay, so sometimes we have too much paint, and especially when we're first loading, we're really putting our brush right in there, right? So now that it's nice and loaded, I almost want to remove the excess, so then that way I have just a little bit of paint on the edge of my brush. And then if I need it, then I just lightly touch my tip into the paint so that I'm only picking up fresh paint on the tip. Okay, so you don't have to go like this and smash into your paint every time you need new paint. So you got to be a little bit more gentle, light-handed on there, especially with a long detailer brush like this. Okay, so the fun thing about the detailers, if you want to do like curly cues and stuff, then definitely we add a little bit more water in it because our floating medium is still a little bit thick, right? So we want a little bit more movement, and you can really play and have some fun with your liner brush really lightly, but it's got to have that right amount of liquid, right? So if you have too much heavy paint, it's not going to give you a nice fine line. So we just got to find that little happy balance. Okay, and then like I said, you can really play with your liner brush and get really thick areas depending on how much you press on it, and then how much you pop up on that chisel, and then you can carry on and get all those little fine lines. So it's all about playing with your detailer brushes, guys, and practice on the side on something so that you're getting that real fine line that you're looking for. Because we don't want to make this too thick. Okay, so just light pressure, guys. You don't need to put any major pressure on it. It's just a very light line. Okay, so that you're getting your little fence line in there. A little bit of pressure, but not too much, right? So it just looks like it's a little bit thick, like a 2x4 or whatever they are using for their fences. And have a little bit of there. And then we're going to put our straight lines here just to put our fence posts in there. And then I want to make sure that this line touches this line. And go off a little bit off the edge. Sometimes they have it sticking out. And just a simple little fence. And then if you go and touch in your white just a little tiny bit, you know, you can add little streaks of different colors in there. You know, just to say that there's maybe some snow on there. Maybe there's a little snow on the top of each post. A couple little flecks there. And so just enough to say there's a little bit of maybe fresh white somewhere. And then we're going to do some more pouncing on here too, guys. Okay, so that it looks like there's more snow. And then you can go over to your browns too, or browns or your grays, you know, browny gray. Like sometimes I'll actually make a little bit of browny gray mixture here on the side. Again, it's a little bit inky, so it's a little bit runny, so that we're able to flick up. So when we're making our little trees or little grassy marks, you know, you're just kind of coming in and doing a bunch of little random little wispiness. Okay, so definitely you can place in a few of those if you want here and there. You know, very light. The background. Make it a little bit more greeny if you want. Greeny brown. So they just disappear over here. And then every once in a while you can put in a couple little grassies that's gonna poke out. And then especially here along the water line. And I have the odd little, as you can see, that one's starting to get a little too thick. So I just want to add a little bit more water into my paint. Okay, and then I'll sometimes even wipe it out on my towel, so then that way I take off the excess. Okay, and just light strokes. Random here and there. Okay, so they can all start from the same kind of pivot point and flick out. Okay. And then we do just a few smaller ones. You can always add more of these in there later too. Okay, and then our other tree too, that's the foreground that I want to add as well. Okay, so this just kind of branches up like it's in front of you. Okay, and really skinny little tree here. Just a little guy. So I do my main ones. Decide how many branches you want. And then you can start making more little branches off of your big branches. Especially if you're not used to your flat brushes. Something simple. Got a little bit here. All right. If you look at real trees, none of them are all the same, so try to be random in your trees a little bit. And then we definitely want to add some more snow to this, guys. And we want to add more to our water. Okay, so where we're going to start doing now a little bit is some shading along our one side. Okay, because there's going to be one side. If you look on things on an angle, you're going to have the shadow on one side, and then the sun's going to be hitting on the other side. So it really doesn't matter on this side. We do have our light source already on our trees coming in on this direction. So most likely our shadow is going to be on this side, because there's a little bit of a hill there from the river. Okay. So we're going to add some shadowing into our water. And this is where sometimes we want to just add one color to our brush. Okay, so depending on what size you feel comfortable, we even have 16s available. You can use a 16 or a 12. And I'm going to add a little bit darker blue in there now, that Persian blue. And we want to come over and find some clean medium, guys. Okay, so remember some of this is a bit dirty over here. And just work that in a little tiny bit. And then what I want to do is come over and side load so I can get just the smallest amount of paint on the corner of my brush. So you're thinking, wow, that's a little bit of a paint and lots of brush. The bigger the brush is going to actually give you guys more control. Okay, you're going to have more floating medium that you can put in there too. That's going to help you glide and slide along. Okay, and then once you're in your pile, you can back up a little bit and test to see, am I getting a nice fine line? Okay, just that little bit of paint. Okay. So this is what we do in side load sometimes, where we float some shading in. Okay, so we sometimes add one color, sometimes we'll add 4 colors. So there's lots of little ways of playing with loading your brush. Okay. So what I'm going to do is come in around the edge of my shadow area, okay, and just give it a little bit of a random solid color all along the one side. Okay, so blend that in a little bit so it's not like a hard line. So you want that to be a little bit soft. So that's going to add dimension in the water line and the shoreline. A little bit random here. Definitely not one of those cold days where it's totally frozen over, but it's such a fast running river that it doesn't get a chance to freeze, is the whole concept of this. If you guys are from the south and only have palm trees in your area, these are some of the things that we live with this cold winter days. Some of our waters don't freeze up totally. Okay, so depending on how fast the currents are. So once we have our little side shadow in all the way around the edge, okay, a little bit dark, you can always add to it if it's not dark enough. Step back, take a look at it, see if you need more. Okay, so now I want you guys to be aware of your light areas. So anywhere that is already light, we don't want to darken it. Okay, so we just want to add some flickers of depth. Okay, so we're going to move that shine of the shadow, okay, over a bit and just in some certain areas. And especially back here where it's further away, we definitely want to add some more shadow there as well. Okay, and then just every once in a while, we're going to move down a little bit and add a little bit of side color going. Okay, so just blend around the sides if you want, so it's wet, and then just swoop a few areas out. And then over here, we want to add some depth over to the side, so we're not really shadowing the side like we did over here. We're just adding some darkness into some places. Okay, so maybe there's going to be some ripples going to be coming over these little areas. Okay, so we just got to get those dark areas in. And so maybe there's a little bit of a hill on this side, so maybe there's a little bit more shadow. So this is just the out of my brain now too. Like I've just been around nature so much that, you know, sometimes I like to just live and change things up a little bit. Okay, and come down here. So we have some random spots. Okay, and try not to darken those light areas. You have to turn your brush upside down a little bit sometimes. And then keep adding floating medium. You'll see that it's not letting you blend. The paint feels dry. Then you just have to add a little bit more moisture to your brush. Get that real translucent color to float over what you've been working on. So a little bit more snowy look here that we need to fix. And so we definitely want it to be darker on this side than we do on this side. Alrighty. Tap there. Okay. Maybe there's a little bit more shadow right behind this hill here too. You see how I like to have just one side of my brush loaded and it's not blending for me. I just picked up a little bit more floating medium. That'll help. Over here we're probably going to put a little rock. Throw some boulders in there. And then how I did that, guys, is with my scruffy. Okay, so you can go and load up just a little bit of black and a bunch of white and keep pouncing. Okay, and then you're going to move right out of your black pile, guys, so that you can start creating that little bit of gray. Okay, mostly white. A little bit more greenscape to it if you want. Okay. And then all we're going to do is just do a couple little boulders. So sometimes I'll start with the back side of my brush if I want to make something small. Because if you go straight down, sometimes you'll end up too big or too round or not the shape that you want. So sometimes what we do is just kind of rock our brush back and forth to create some different tones in there. Okay, so remember there's snow on this rock, right? So you want to have some freckly spots where the snow and the water is hit on top of that stone and it's starting to freeze. And okay, and then we can put maybe another little stone over here. So we'll pick up some dark, make it like a boulder shape, right? And then go back in and flick on top of it with your white. You need to just go straight down just to do a little blending, but not much, guys, okay? And then if you really want to put another rock, you can put one over here right at the bottom of our river here. Maybe one's over here into the water line here as well. And This one here maybe is sticking out of onto the grassy area. It's covered in snow. Okay, so we definitely want to make it a little bit rounded so that it looks like it's a stone. And just very lightly so that that way it doesn't get lost in your snowy area. Okay, so now when this is dry, we're going to float some water around it as well, so then that way it'll look like some of it's underneath the water. So while that's drying, we can come back and visit our big tree here. And this is where if you have that little bit of lighter brown color, or you just want to make your own little brown color, you can always add some white. Okay, and then we're going to take that brown and multi-load our brush. I'm just going back and forth. This is a little bigger brush, so it's a lot easier for me to blend back and forth like this. I have more control. And I'm going to let it go dirty, guys. Make that white dirty. That's what I call a dirty white. Okay, so it's not nice and bright like that. Okay, so you're just kind of playing around with it back and forth and allowing some of that dark to come up and then move back down so that you're starting to create that real soft, creamy, beigey color. Okay, if you feel like it's too warm for you, you can always add just that little tiny titch of yellow in there, and that'll help make it a little bit more tan color. Okay. And that's how I create my colors, guys, right on my plate. Right, as I need more, I add more, and then the nice thing about the dimensions that you get, you pick up some stronger whites and some different colors, then it's really easy for you to have some variation. Okay, so we're just going to start off with a very light little technique, and we don't want it to be globby, guys, so if it's too heavy paint, just knock some off. And then where I want to put my little highlights is where a branch is, definitely to lay that out a little bit more. And then not too light, go over it a few times with your brush and it'll start softening things for you a little bit. Okay. And then come right out, especially anything that's going to be sitting on top of each other. Okay. So you come in behind it and just kind of give that little bit of a highlight glow on top of your tree. Okay, just to soften things a little bit. Add a little bit of floating medium in there if you feel like it's getting hard for you to blend. And then just follow it along. Okay. We are going to be adding some snow. So you see how that branch just pops up? This one here could be behind it, so it doesn't have to be as light. Okay, so anything that you want far away, you want it to be a little darker color. Okay. Anything that's in front, make sure you pop that highlight in front. Okay, so it's just basically going over it very lightly on these ones in the back, just to give it some color. And then we can add a little bit more of a highlight to the front of our tree. Okay, so you're just going to randomly float in that color along the edge. Give it a few streaks. Add some more dark brown into it if it's getting too late. And let it go streaky, wet on wet. Give it a little bit more coverage. Just a simple tree, guys. Okay. And then if you want to add just a little bit more color to these guys, whoop, back here. I picked up green by accident. So it's dry, I can erase. Alright, so I'm going to go back over here and try to add some more color here. Just a little bit. Just random, guys. Just so that it stands out a little bit more. And like I said, we're going to freckle a little tiny bit of white on here now. Okay, so if you have your old yucky brush, you can go in and just use the chisel edge and just do some stippling. Okay, so we're just going to use our flat brush to stipple the snow on. So that way we can be really selective on where we're going to just tiny little snow. And then of course it always collects here in the little corners. Okay, so you want to make sure you put some snow in there. Just randomly little ticks of snow. And if you want to use this to add your snow down here, we're going to put, you know, some random little hills of snow over here. You'll see how it is so much nicer if you have one of those scruffies. Okay. But if you do want to add some areas that are really, really tiny, you know, maybe around your fence post, just to kind of stipple a little bit more in front of your posts, okay, so you don't see a perfect line. Just little tiny ones, you know, sometimes you have a little bit more control when you do want just that little bit of snow, okay, and if you didn't have enough snow, then you can always pounce a little bit more over here. And then just very, very lightly on these guys here. It's hard to get these little tiny guys here because if you're using your yucky brush, it hasn't got no chisel on there. So just less is more usually, you know, so just add a little bit and then you can always go back in and add a little bit more if you feel like it's a blizzard day and you need more snow. Just random little. And then we can always go in and adjust anything you want just with your little brushes. A little bit of snow on the top, bottom of all your little trees, random. Okay. Around all your edges here. And then what I did here, guys, is I kind of tried to make it look a little bit marshy, and like there's like all these little grasses growing out. So of course over here you can't see them because they're covered in snow. But on this side you might see just a little bit more trailing out just along the edge there. And I'll show you here. So this is where I pounced in just a little bit more of that greenscape color and darkness just along the bottom of the water line. Okay, just so it looks like it's a little bit more of a hill. And with your yucky brush, or maybe you've seen my hack number 4, I believe it is. I lost count now on my hacks. I actually cut up an old brush and I took scissors to it and I made it more choppy so that I can make like a feather brush out of it. Okay, so if you don't have one handy, then definitely you can try and make one. And or definitely if you like to have a proper one, then Donna Dewberry has one in her pro set as well. So it's really, really nice, and it's actually longer bristles than the one that I made, right? But both give you a different type of look. And then if you don't have one of those, maybe you have a rake brush or a fan brush. Okay, so you can maybe just use a little tiny bit of that corner and just use that as a bunch of little detailers. So that way you can put lots of little grass in really quickly without having to do each one individually like we were doing here with the bigger grass. Okay, so I really highly suggest if you don't have these brushes, then check out my painting hack and make your own. Because I really do love this brush. And the way I did it, guys, I actually cut so much in that one spot that I ended up with a thick area on the one side of my brush. Okay, so this is my trick. Is just the fact that I have one side of my brush is a little bit stronger than the other side, less wispy. Okay, and then when I load that brush, okay, so I'm going to add my floating medium in there, dampen it a bit with water. add a little bit of that greenscape or whatever complementary color that you want to do. A little softer gray kind of color, right? And then we go over and we side load a little bit of white. And I did it on my detailer side. Okay, so we'll find out when you're cutting it. There's always going to be one corner or edge of the brush that might be better for you than the other. Okay, so we definitely want some floating medium in there, just like we do our little detailer lines. Okay, so then that way we get a little bit more flick. I'll show you on the paper here. And you can practice a little bit on the side to see how you're doing. Okay, does that give you enough coverage? Is it dark enough? Maybe you don't see gray on gray, because this is a gray paper. So that's a black in there. Just to darken things a little bit. And that way you could get all these little grassy, wild looks really, really quickly with a fan brush or a rake brush. But don't be afraid to make your own if you don't have one. And like I said, I like playing around with it. I have all the brushes, but I still like to play around with it because it gives me just a little bit different look. So I can actually kind of like scruffy a little bit. I can pounce on it a little bit, right? If it's too heavy on paint, definitely use your fingers to pounce some of that out. And then get that happy medium so that you're getting those little strokes. Okay, so the little grassies. And they just different directions. You can just kind of make them look all different ways. Okay, so you're just at the very base of that line. Add a little bit more white in it here and there just so that you get some different looks. Okay, so that just gives you that little dirty line. Pounce a little bit. And just flick out. You don't want it to be too sideways. Okay, so you can always just add a few more up. But you do want to have them a little bit different directions, right? Try not to go over each area too much. Keep grabbing fresh paint because you could lose the paint on the edge of these little detailers quickly, right? So you can, as you run out, you'll see you get a little bit more wispy look. Okay, so make this disappear right away out here. Just add a little bit more depth on this side. And then sometimes I like to go over it again very lightly with the white now. Okay, once you got that color in there, okay, then you can go in and just ever so lightly go in with your white. And just very lightly highlight on top of it. Okay, so you can always put a couple little dirty patches in there too somewhere, you know, with your scruffy brush. If it's too dark, it's good because then when you go over it again with the light, then it'll tend to give you that little highlight extra on top of it. Okay, so just random. The tree, the snow is covering the base of them, so you don't know where they're coming from. If you want more precise detail, then definitely go in with your liner brush. Okay, so if you want some areas that are going to be a little bit more detailed, then definitely go and put them in. So sometimes I like to have like a little bit of shadow looks underneath my trees here as well. So you want this to definitely look a little darker back here. You always pounce in a little bit of depth, just a little bit here and there, right underneath your snow, so it looks like it stands out a little bit more. And you have like little shadow areas underneath each tree. Okay, so a little bit dirty area under here, and then pounce a little bit more fresh white on areas will really help to make them stand out a little bit more. And I did say that I wanted to come over here and add a few more branches. Like if I feel like I have room for them, you know, you could add a little bit more brown. See how you feel with yours. If you feel like, you know, you got to have some open space too a little bit. You can't have it too full, right? So you can see how I double loaded my brush. I got the brown and the white at the same time. Okay, so now that I know what I'm doing and I want to put that in there, okay, you can put your two colors in your brush at the same time and create that branch with pressure, and then pull up on your chisel and change your direction, and then I'll have a nice thick one. So you're straight flat, you guys can see that, right? And then straight out is the one stroke way. Okay, and then I want to put another branch right here. Add a few more highlights into your tree if you want. There's a little bit of thickness here at the base. And with a little branch. And then we're going to just flicker some more snow on there. Some fresh white. With our little scruffy brush or a little fan brush. Okay, our fan brush works really good too if you just want to grab just that little tiny bit of freckly dots. So give me lots of ways to play, guys. You know, just it's all about using your imagination and playing around with it. Okay. So while we have our feather brush, this is where I definitely want to play around with our water a little bit more. And we're going to add a little bit of floating medium and into our water, into our white. Okay. And we're going to start figuring out where we want to have these little rivers. Okay, so I'm going to show you, that's the tree that I showed you up close. Right, so there's a little bit of a walkway along the along the fence line, so you know, there's a little bit of trail that's old, that's still in the snow that I built in behind there too, so we can add a few more grassinesses in that area here as well. And then our water. Okay, so you can see that we should have some streaky areas still going on. Okay. And then this is where I added the swirls and all the little extra waves and hills and movement into the water. Okay, so this is where we're going to find our directions now. Okay, so we're just putting that little bit of sideways stroke. Okay, make sure that it's like really milky, translucent white. Okay, not too bright at all. And then where you got a little bit of a line, you can start flicking over with your white. Okay, to give yourselves little bits of falls areas. Okay, so then right over in the dark area here, right, we have that little bit of a light area here, and we can put another little falls in here. Okay, so then it's got to move around the rock, so it's going to go woo. Have to make that sound when you're doing it, otherwise it won't work. Right, that little wavy motion there going on. Okay, so then we can straighten it out again a little bit. And then put a few more little wavy areas. Okay, so it's just random, guys. And a little bit more streaky. Keep adding floating medium into your white so that you get that little area. Okay, so maybe there's a little bit of movement here. Flick it out. And then maybe this area here is a little bit more, it pools into a lake area. So it's just coming down the hill and then it falls into an area that's a little bit more still. Okay, so we can add a little bit more of a falls here. Okay, a little bit more snow on there. Okay, and then this is where you sometimes get too much lightness. So you just want to pick up that little bit of blue every once in a while and add a little bit back into it if you feel like it's too white. Okay, so just come in and add that little bit more blue back in. Pick up a little tiny bit of that darker blue in there too to kind of pop in and under areas. Okay, so we definitely want to keep some of that areas darker. Okay. And then where I want to add some blue, some cobalt blue, is right through our rock. Okay, so a little bit of floating medium, guys, so that you can still see that rock through there. Okay, so it just looks like the water is covering our rock now. And then add some blue over this one here. And then just add just that little bit of white back over it. Okay, oops, not too heavy. Okay, and just play with your little areas of movement and a little bit of falls, heavy rapid areas. We have a lot of salmon rivers up here, and they're really hot, lots of movement in there. And so just push and flick up. A little bit of a C curve shape. Okay. And then it'll come out into a flat area that's a little bit more still. Okay, so this is where I like to add, play, to get a little bit more colors in there. Okay, so you can multi-load your little fan brush too. You can actually pick up blue on one side and white on the other side and play with it. So then that way you've got your two colors going on at the same time. Playing. And I think I like this little soft area here. Okay. So what do you think so far, guys? And then right at the bottom of all the falls, sometimes we have all that snow and movement of the little falls are making a lot of movement, right? So we want to add some splashes in there. Okay, so a little bit of frozen water look. Okay, so a little bit more, especially at the bottom of our little falls areas. You can see that there's little splashy marks. Does it look like it's got a lot of water moving? A little bit of dark on top of my white. Just a little bit. So it looks like it's coming from a dark area back there. It's whatever you can make little freckles with, right? It's just all about playing with all these different brushes. Right, keep an eye on you here. My friend was just here and she's watching for a bit. Just loves the pick and the technique. Thank you so much. You loving the water, Becky? And push this out of their way a little bit more so you guys can see. Okay, so what else are we missing? Anything in here that we forgot? Except for, you know, giving it a couple more little trees and picking up a little bit. You can use your feather brush again if you want. Use a little bit of browns or like a gray brown. They're dead, right? They're frozen solid. Okay, add some floating medium in there or just a tiny little bit of water. Okay, so then I wipe out the excess so that I can just go and pick up just the very little tips of it. Okay, so we want to make our little path along the side of the fence. Okay, just here and there. And a little area where he was maybe going for a walk to see how the river is. Maybe he wants to do some ice fishing. Okay, a little bit more wherever you feel like you want to add it. Again, sometimes I want a little bit more detail. I'll go in with my liner brush. And I can get those little fine lines in there. Always add a little bit more deeper areas. Get some brown into these guys. And then when we play with different colors, sometimes it adds more dimension. And then even adding a little bit more blue, like you want to float a little bit of that Parisian blue. Okay, just that color by itself. You can float up just slightly over around on your water too, and that'll help to, or over your snow, just to give that little bit of a hue of the water that's touching. But you want it to be translucent, guys, okay? On top of your white, just to give it that little darker color wherever the water might be splashing up on the snow and starting to freeze. Okay, so sometimes we have to do like a reverse shading mode. We shaded all this side first, and then now we're going in, we're adding that same color just to the other side. Wherever you feel like you need a little bit more depth in it, around the hill. Add it wherever you think. Okay, especially up here, you want it to look darker. And then actually what it needs, I think, is another tree. So we can always just put in a small little one up here, and it's going to come up right over into the area of water. I need some fresh brown, it's too watery. And I want this to be a little darker too, so just throw a little tiny bit of black into that brown. So then that way it stands out a little bit further. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of a tree here. And then that way that'll disguise the top here. Alright. A little bit over the water line here. We'll disguise things a little bit too. A little bit thicker on the base here. And then we're going to use our scruffy brush again with some fresh white. And just pounce lightly over it. Okay, just to say that there's a little bit of snow movement there. Right in front of all of your little grassy areas. Wherever you want to soften things a little bit. Okay, so we're going to add just a little bit of fresh snow that fell on our grass. Just a little bit of softness in front of your grassy areas. That way it looks like it's buried in the snow. I could sit and play with this all day. Tweak it, play with it. And of course, your liner brush works really good to put your John Henry on there. I'm just going to find my liner brush. And you can even put your little signature here with your little liner brush. I'm just going to put Mandy's Creative Touch in 2001 here down in the corner. So this is our Canadian winter, guys. What do you think? Did you have fun with me today? Please let me know. Comment down in your chats. But it's fun. Once you get the gist of how to create these leaves and trees and evergreens and snow, like you can change it up and create any kind of little landscape, right? Play around with it. Make it your own. Definitely had a lot of fun here. Hopefully you guys will share the YouTube video with your friends. Invite them over to my channel. Subscribe. All that fun stuff. Well, thank you so much again. It was a wonderful afternoon and a snowy, cold winter day. And I can't wait for spring to come. And we'll see you guys out in the group, okay? Show me your work. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you so much.